The disappearance of Malaysia flight MH370 is one of the greatest mysteries in the history of aviation. On March 8, 2014, it took off from Kuala Lumpur and was flying to Beijing with 239 people on board, but it never made it to Beijing. And according to a new report, the pilot of MH370 was clinically depressed and he purposely killed all the passenger and crew on board. Welcome back to InformOverload. We do the news and we make it entertaining. I'm Charlotte Jobre, and I wonder if you've ever wished you had a place to get news updates about the most interesting news stories currently trending. Well, come on, subscribe and turn on notifications so you get those updates before anybody else. So we still don't know for sure what happened to flight MH370, but according to a new report by William Langwish of The Atlantic, one of the most well-known theories about what happened to the plane on March 8, 2014 might actually be true. The pilot of MH370 was Zahari Ahmad Shah. Shah was one of the most senior captains at Malaysia Airlines. He was married, he had 2 children, he had 2 houses and lived in a gated development. In one of the houses that he owned, he'd built a Microsoft flight simulator. He would use it often and was active on online forums when he would post about it. According to his wife, Faiza Khanam, her husband spent hours alone on his flight simulator, and he had stopped talking to her right before flight MH370 disappeared. Shah had also been talking to his daughter Aisha and telling her that he was in an emotional turmoil over his crumbling marriage. She said that during her last conversation with her father, she barely recognized him and said that he seemed both lost and disturbed. But both Shah's wife and daughter do not believe that he was responsible for the crash, but in interviews with police, Shah's wife said that he was increasingly distracted in the months leading up to the flight. According to interviews with Shah's friends, Shah was often lonely and sad. His marriage had ended, his children were grown up and they'd left the house, and he would also spend his time off between flights pacing empty rooms alone. Shah refused to see a marriage counselor and instead had extramarital affairs. The report by The Atlantic said that Shah spent a lot of time talking to women on Facebook. The report said, I quote, "He is known to have established a wistful relationship with a married woman and her 3 children, one of whom was disabled, and have obsessed over 2 young internet models whom he encountered on social media and whom he left Facebook comments that apparently did not elicit responses." And according to Shah's lifelong friend, Shah deliberately crashed flight MH370. He too believed that Zahari was guilty, a conclusion he had come to reluctantly. He said, "It doesn't make sense. It's hard to reconcile with the man I knew, but it's the necessary conclusion." So let's go back to that day to better understand this. Shah's flight transmissions were strange. At 1:01 a.m. he radioed that the flight had leveled off at 35,000 feet, and if you're not familiar with flight protocols, it's normal for a captain to report leaving an altitude, not report arriving at one. At 1:08 a.m. the flight headed toward Vietnam, and Zahari also radioed to report that the plane was at 35,000 feet. The last time Shah was heard from, he radioed the controller at Kuala Lumpur Center. The controller said, "Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh, 120.9, good night." Zahari responded, "Good night, Malaysian 370. That might sound normal to you, but pilots are actually supposed to repeat back every word of what the controller says on the radio. From this point, the pilot never checked in again with Ho Chi Minh, and he didn't answer any other messages. While this is happening, the controllers in Vietnam saw MH370 cross into their airspace, but it disappeared from radar. They tried to contact the aircraft and did not receive a response. The Kuala Lumpur Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center wasn't notified about the plane's disappearance until 6:32 a.m., which is the time that the plane should have been about to land in Beijing. Much of this goes against what the Malaysian government has said about the pilot of MH370. They insisted that Shah was mentally stable. The Malaysian government said that the crash was caused by an oxygen deficiency. It also could have been an electrical fire that brought down the plane, or a potential hijacking by 2 passengers who boarded the plane with stolen passports. But these theories do not support the fact that the plane was actually traveling for hours on autopilot. The debris from the plane also suggested that the plane was under control when it crashed. This raises the question of whether or not the Malaysian government was being totally honest about what happened to flight MH370. Even though the plane was not seen on radar, it was making connections with a geostationary Indian Ocean satellite for 6 hours. That means that it didn't suddenly crash. It was continuing on a high-speed, high-altitude cruising flight. The writer who wrote this report, William Langwish, is an aviation expert, and he suggests that the most likely theory is that Shah either killed or incapacitated his co-pilot before rapidly climbing to 40,000 feet, depressuring the cabin to slowly kill everyone on board. The cabin masks on board were not intended for more than 15 minutes of use during emergency descents to altitudes less than 13,000 feet. The masks would have been useless cruising at 40,000 feet. This would have caused the passengers and crew aboard flight MH370 to become incapacitated within a couple of minutes, losing consciousness and gently passing away without choking or suffocating. If you guys are interested in reading that full report, I honestly don't do it justice, so I highly recommend you read that. It's posted down below in the description of this video. The report is extremely well written and a great piece of investigative journalism, and definitely kind of makes sense to me. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. Do you think this report solves the mystery of what happened to flight MH370? Let me know. So we normally respond to comments at the end of our videos, but because of the nature of this video, I'm not sure it's appropriate. I realize this information might be hard to process. It has turned from a flight disappearance into a murder investigation, but it is important for these families to find out the truth about what happened to their loved ones. On behalf of IO, our hearts go out to the victims' families and everyone else affected by this incident. For now, if you want to keep watching this channel, click this playlist that's currently flashing on your screen, and don't forget to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can see you in a future IO video.